I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. The last time this guest was on, he talked about financial cycles and war cycles. Didn't talk that much about the war cycle, but he's more worried about Taiwan after the Olympics. And what happened right after the Olympics? Bam, they start flying into Taiwanese airspace. And now we have this big blow up in Russia and Ukraine, and could go much wider. And he talked about these big war cycles. I'm talking about Charles Nenner. Charles Nenner, the world-renowned geopolitical and financial cycle expert. And he's called me up a few days ago, Charles, and thank you for doing this, and said, I got something to say about the war cycle. You haven't talked a lot about it in the past because we just weren't really in it yet, but it looks like we're in it. So, Charles Nenner, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
You're welcome. There's a lot to talk about.
Well, let's start with the obvious, Russia, Ukraine. I had Paul Craig Roberts on. He says NATO's not going to get involved. NATO's not. There's going to be there is a war, obviously, but he says NATO is not going to get involved. And sure enough, NATO is not sending troops into Ukraine. What's going on? Let's start with the Ukrainian situation there.
Well, I don't know. We discussed it last time. I said the European view is a bit different from people who can think for themselves, and I reminded people of the Cuban crisis under Kennedy. And everybody found it normal that Kennedy was prepared to have a world war in order not to have rockets, Russian rockets on Cuba. But now they find it normal that they put 200 miles or 100 miles from the Russian border, they put their rockets. And it says Putin is paranoid if he doesn't allow it. And I don't see anybody discussing that point. Why was it good enough for Kennedy to force the Russians out of Cuba? And it's not good enough, that Putin says, don't come that close, stay out. Just stay out of Ukraine, and then everything is fine. Now, they make up the story that he wants much more. Actually, that's a disguise for we might have made a mistake by not being reasonable and saying, listen, maybe it's reasonable. Let's say we keep Ukraine out of the NATO. And like I wrote in my research, 10, 20 years later, you can always change your mind.
Do you think this is going to turn into, you talked about war cycles, and one of the fascinating things you said a while ago, years ago, you said about World War II is that World War I and World War II were really the same cycle. They have it in history books as two wars, but in your cycle work, it's really one big cycle. Are we entering one big war cycle right now again?
Yeah, you have to understand. Let's compare to the Dow Jones. If the cycle of Dow Jones tops, like we showed in the last update, the market goes down. But before that topping process, some stocks go down already, and some don't go down yet. So the war cycle is in such a situation that there's a great danger for a huge war, but it doesn't mean that the huge war is the big down move. It can go like stock by stock. So it could be Ukraine, and that could still be a little bit smaller. What I have been writing about, I think there's going to be a combination by Russia, China, and Iran together. And China is watching how we deal with Ukraine before they start with Taiwan. I think that's the big one. And what I still find amazing is that everybody is, I won't say trembling, but getting a bit afraid if he mentions the word nuclear. But he still is a bit reasonable. I don't think Ayatollahs are reasonable, and nobody is afraid for the Iranian nukes. So the West is in disarray. They have no line of where to go and what to do.
You have long said that your big worry is the South China Sea, China. You think that's where the big one's going to come from. You think that as this thing percolates in Eastern Europe, in Western Russia, and Ukraine in the middle, you think that China's going to make its move?
Well, that was based on a couple of years ago, for instance, that I saw the aerospace industry was developing hugely compared to other countries in China and that part of the world. And we see them making these islands in the Chinese Sea, so they're preparing something. And of course, China, we have the same problem. Why is Taiwan allowed to be separate from China? Because we like it, or can we say that in the time Chiang Kai-shek just took off from China and broke away? So we're going to have the same problem, and I never hear any reasonable discussions. Like for now, there should be a discussion. Why don't we agree that Taiwan actually broke away from China and it's part of China? I mean, I'm now listening in Miami. I'm leaving tomorrow for Europe to all these stations, and they bring the so-called experts. but you don't hear any reasonable explanation. It doesn't even have to be reasonable. I remind you that maybe 10, 15 years we talked about inflation, deflation situation, and everybody was talking about inflation. And I said no inflation yet. And I said what worries me is that there's not one person saying maybe there's no inflation. It's something very interesting. There's not another voice that you hear. So about the situation, there's not another voice that you hear. Then you got the American situation that I call the cowboys and the Indians, like the people who flew into 9/11 were cowards. Well, I'm not brave enough to do it. So the Americans look at the good guys, the bad guys, the cowards, and the not cowards. The paranoid people like Putin, and we're the reasonable people. And things are not that simple. So I hope that the White House employs psychiatrists and psychologists to know how to deal with a person like Putin at the moment and not go full force against him, because that puts him in a corner, and that's not good.
Then now you could get a nuclear war that way.
Correct. Correct.
I'm worried. You know what? I'm worried a little less at the moment about nuclear war, and that this onerous dirty bomb, financial stink bomb they're dropping on Russia is going to backfire, because the West is not very strong. I mean, Europe has what, 18 trillion dollars in negative interest rate paying bonds disguised as an asset. I mean, Merkel stopped all nuclear power, and then all of a sudden her gas is cut off. You know, in what world do they think they're going to be stronger financially after this is all over? I mean, they're ready to tip it all over into an abyss, are they not?
Yeah, I don't want to go into politics, but Trump said to the NATO, you have to spend more money. And everybody thought he was crazy. And he says, don't rely on Russian gas. And everybody thought he was crazy. And I don't hear today that somebody says, well, maybe he had a point about certain things. So they live in the world of their own. The Americans are like, what would I say, is like no finesse. They don't understand that there are certain personalities that you have to approach from psychologically from a different point, and don't go heart by heart, power by power, but there's nobody to talk to.
Are you worried that what the onerous things they're doing in the economy, you know, with all these sanctions, and we're going to stop trade and kick Russia out of the, you know, you even had Jamie Dimon saying, wait a minute, wait, you can't kick them out of the SWIFT system, because they may start another system. What do you think about the onerous financial things they're doing to Russia and anybody supporting them?
Well, maybe you remember, because we know each other so long, that I talked about the Kondratyev cycle of 60, 70, 80 years. And it says in the Kondratyev cycle, there's always a new continent that takes over. And we said that India, Singapore, China, Australia is now going to be the leaders, and the United States is going to get behind. And maybe you remember that I'm still surprised how fast they try to destroy the United States. And maybe you remember that I said the biggest problem of the United States is going to be the cycle on social unrest. So that is going to kill. I don't know what's going to kill, but I feel very strange in this country. It looks like there could be a civil war, because people are so on the edge. And of course, you know, if oil prices continue to go up, and they will, and natural gas will goes up, and with all the economic sanctions, you know, it could be a drop dead situation for the economy. And maybe that's one reason why we could have a much lower stock market. By the way, it looks like the beginning of March, you could have a bounce in the stock market. So it's interesting to see what will lead to that bounce. It's not coming down straight.
I wanted to ask you about the civil unrest cycle. You know, I have this big trucker convoy going from coast to coast, ended up at the State of the Union address, or near the State of the Union address. It's going to be, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, 50,000 trucks. I mean, it's a huge thing. It's just picking up steam across the country. What do you think about that? Is that just more of a tip-off to civil unrest?
I think so, but a lot of civil unrest. I wrote in a piece that when Rome was burning, so we're talking about 2,000 years ago, it says in the books the senators were discussing if angels are male or female. Well, Rome was burning. This world is burning, and we're discussing now what kind of sign you have to put on a public restroom. It's the same situation. Nobody takes the lead in the big situations and sees the line that we're dealing with at this moment.
You think this is history-changing moments in your cycle work? You think these are big turns coming up in the cycle? And explain.
Well, we already had the turn based on the cycles and based what I see, because maybe I see more because I know what to look at. What's going on in this country is that what the people are busy with. And what is it compared to a nuclear war? Nothing. But, you know, even Biden's decisions now are based on public relations, because I don't have to tell you, because I'm not the one who talks about it, but if the United States would be independent like it was before on oil, and it would open the pipeline like Trump did, then we wouldn't be in a situation that oil could go up another $50.
You think oil's going to go up another, going to hit 150 a barrel?
I don't want to scare you. You remember once I said oil could go to $3 and we didn't believe that?
Yeah.
Now it looks like 150, and if it goes to that, it can even go to $250. So you can imagine what it does to the economy.
Oh my gosh. What would happen if we had $250 barrel oil?
That I'm not the expert. Like I said, I'm a medical doctor. I taught myself fundamentals, but I don't think I know fundamentals better than my ex-colleague at Goldman Sachs. He always used to teach me, and I know something about it, but I'm not the right person to say something about that. But you can imagine it's not going to be a great situation.
You think it would tank the economy? I mean, obviously it would tank the economy, correct?
Obviously, yeah, obviously. I think it's already tanking with these, you know, in Europe, certain companies have to close down because they cannot pay the gas prices anymore.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. These sanctions are backfiring on the West, right? I mean, that's a backfire.
Of course, because if you have a totalitarian system, it always suffers less than a democratic system on sanctions.
Because they can suck it up.
Yeah. And Russia can do business with China, with Iran, with some countries. So they're going to take care of themselves.
You think the sanctions, do you think they're going to hurt Russia more or the West more?
Again, I'm not the expert, but I think it's the West is disorganized. They have, you know, the good thing for China and Russia is they have long-term outlooks, because they don't change the leaders for 20, 30, 40 years. Here we change every couple of years, so you don't have a long-term outlook that you can do something. That's why it's interesting that in the East they look at cycles. I just said somebody that if Putin would look at the crude oil cycle, and he knows when he needs money, he can invade once the crude oil cycle is up, and he's going to get a lot of money for his crude oil. So they look at the reality totally different. And in the West, we're still behind. We have our ideas how reality works, and we don't look at other things. We don't look out of the box.
But my question, do you think the sanctions will hurt the West more than Russia?
I don't think so. I think Russia will go to the East, to China, do business with China, to help Iran, and they take care of themselves. On the short term, maybe it takes time to get organized, but I'm sure they get organized.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to pin you down. I am trying to pin you down. But so you think the sanctions are going to hurt like Germany and factories closing down in the West and oil prices going up? You think it's going to hurt the West more?
I think so. Europe has to come up with $100, $200 billion to support their defense. It's a total different world that they were not expecting.
Wow. What's going to happen to Europe?
Well, based on the Kondratyev cycle, is that, like I said, the East is going to be the leader, Europe is going to be the middle, and the United States is going down to the bottom. That's not a political thing that I say. That's just based on the cycles. I could be wrong, but if you ask my opinion based on cycles, that's what it's going to happen.
Do you think when do you think we have this big war with China?
That I don't know. I only know it's the same thing. When I came on last, I said, look at my 3 cycles. The market is topping, and it topped, and Nasdaq is down like 20%. This is a big cycle that I start working on, taking data back 3,000 years to the Mandarin Chinese Empire, and such a long cycle, so you cannot really fine-tune it.
You said the last time, I thought this was very interesting, because, you know, everything looked great when last time you were on, and you said, you know, it doesn't look great. I mean, if there's 5 companies holding up roughly, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, right. 5 companies holding up the Dow, and half the companies have lost money, and people don't even talk about it. So half the companies, and I thought that was a stunning thing. This is why you got on Zero Hedge last time. And because that was a stunning fact. I was just like, no, half the companies, they've lost money. You think the Dow's up and it's just 5 companies. And it's not
No,
going to hold up.
I said even 50% of the stocks in S&P are in a bear market.
Yes, yes. Right. They've lost. I mean, they're down. So how's it going? Where are we going now from here? I mean, now everybody's like, oh my gosh, if they listen to you, they're known they should sell. But where are we going now? This has a lot steeper to go down. Is that right, or am I misreading that?
Yeah, we had a downside target of 4,100 on the S&P. It hit 4,101. And then we said the bounce starts, and now we say it's going to have a wild trading range. But from the middle of March to the middle of April, we should see a more serious bounce up. So it's not going, like always, it's not going straight down. It's first going to bounce. Interesting to see is what the news item is that's going to lead to the bounce, and then we continue down more and more and more.
Where are you going to go? And after April or middle of April, what's the time frame?
Yeah, I'm looking for an up move from the middle of March till the middle of April.
And then after that, how far down?
Well, it goes in stages again, but we're looking at first we're looking at 15,000 on the Dow Jones if it continues down.
Wow. Woo! So you think this year? You think 15,000 this year?
No, that's not what I said, because it can take a bit longer. Just this, as we do our work, is we know when things start going up, when it starts going down, and then we have price targets. It doesn't have to be in this cycle part down, going to 15,000. It could go, let's say, to 28,000, and then there's a short-term cycle up again and then down. But longer term, we're totally out of the market from January when all the cycles topped. And for now, people who don't want to play the bounce, I say we just wait and see 15,000 is the record as long as it doesn't look different. Now, the problem with this is then we get long-term subscribers says, I'm in there for the long run. And I just want to mention something like that. I've seen it at gold. At gold, we had a top at 2,100. We went out and people says, no, I'm going to stay in because I'm a long-term investor. And then it goes to 2,500 and I go 2,000. I'm a long-term investor. By the time it goes to 1,700, they sell out with a big loss. And now the cycle bottoms, and now they're afraid to go in again. So I really want people really to consider this. If it is really you want to be in there for the long run, or the media and the insiders told you always invest for the long term because they like to sell to you because you're holding everything for the long term.
Do you like? I mean, with all this war and turmoil and companies losing money and businesses shutting down, do you like gold here? Is this a bottom? Is this an entry point, or is this a top?
No, we're still long gold, but cycles have to bottom in a couple of months only. So we're going in the next leg of the bull market, but it's still a bit too early. That's why gold really doesn't take off in this situation.
When do you think gold will take off?
Around May or June. So it could be that situation is going to be worse by then. We have to see. But as you showed, I don't on my Russia chart. There's a low in June.
Here we go. So here's your Russia chart. This is your chart. Right. This is.
Yeah, I sent you this out to show.
This is going back to this is 2008, right here.
This is 2008. The cycle showed that, and then the cycle showed the top here, and a low in June where the cursor is.
Yeah, over here.
So this is, yeah, so it was clear that Russia was going to do something because it looked like a collapse in the Russian market even before the United States. The bond looked like they want to have a move up. So I wrote, there's no reason for bonds to go up from here. The only thing I can come up with is that we're going to have an invasion of Russia. So again, it's not that things happen because the markets react to news. It's still the other way around, which is still difficult to understand, is when cycles turn down, bad things happen. So just watch the cycles, and then you know if bad things are going to happen or not.
Could you describe this cycle, how bad this cycle will be? This is going to be something akin to World War I and II combined or worse. Is that right? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Would you describe how bad you think the cycle is going to be and how big it's going to be, the war cycle?
Well, this is going to be bad. I tell you why. Because we do price targets on markets and war cycles, and we do dates. And if you look at the price target, then the amount of casualties in the next war is going to be much higher than in the First and Second World War. So it's not going to be a joke.
Explain, go into that more.
Okay, let me say I look at IBM. So I can see on the cycle that IBM starts going up next week and it goes up for 5 months. And IBM is at 120 and I see it goes to 170. Now change the cycle for IBM to the war cycle and change the IBM numbers from 120 to 170 to 120 million, 170 million casualties. So you know the price where IBM is going, and in this case you know the amount of casualties, and you know when it's going to happen.
So we lost. Well, Russia lost 27 million. In the last war. They're only a country of 168 million. Russia itself, you know, the former Soviet Union was much more, but they broke off. And we lost, the United States, like 700,000. You're talking way worse than that.
Yeah, and civil casualties. But the problem for Russia is, and I know that from the inside when I was in Russia, is that they're very much afraid. That was one of the reasons why they liked Ukraine also, because they're very much afraid because they're surrounded by Muslim states and they have no way out. So it could be that the Muslim states surrounding Russia will take the advantage now of also trying to pressure Russia or even attack Russia. So he is in a very difficult situation over there. And instead of understanding his situation, we just go head by head. You know, you have to understand Russians. They suffered a lot in the revolution of 1918. They suffered a lot in the Second World War. And they're really afraid of the West. Now we can say that's a joke, the paranoia, but they have reason to be afraid of the West. Because again, I've been living in America for 20 years, and I'm almost an American, but the country that mostly has been out there doing wars is the United States, not Russia.
Yeah. There are plenty of people that would agree with you on that. And do you think the dollar is going to do well in all this? Will it get stronger? Some people say, oh, war is great for the dollar. Man, there's a lot of debt out there. I mean, how does the dollar do?
The interesting thing is the dollar cycle is close to a high.
So the dollar's going to go down from here? Explain.
Yeah, the dollar is very close to a high. And as long as the dollar index doesn't get above a price target of 98, the direction is going to be down soon. So go figure. It needs a lot of interpretation what's going on.
You think that adds to the inflation that we already have in the United States?
Well, the inflation in Europe is also very bad. You know, my numbers show that inflation soon is going to go up to 12%. And I don't know if I showed you that I have a yearly cycle on interest rates going back for 300 years. And this is the beginning of the new move that ended in the 80s. And interest rates are going much and much higher for the next 30 years.
Is that because of the war or why?
Well, you know, it's always, they say it's because it's a supply side. It's like the same thing. Why is the stock market coming down? There's always a story. There are no chips for the car makers, whatever. I don't know what the story is, but the story will come after that because, you know, interest rates have to go much higher.
And your domestic, you've been talking about this a lot. Sure enough, I mean, when you first mentioned this, we didn't really have this, but you were talking about domestic violence early on. Actually, when they started burning the cities down, you were talking it then. That you said, I'm more worried about domestic violence than a war. That was back in 2020.
Yes.
And you said that, you know, with Black Lives Don't Matter and Antifa and all this other stuff, of course, they got off scot-free, and the people that protested at the Capitol are all, you know, political prisoners. But I digress. Do you see more civil unrest, more civil war? Explain what you're seeing.
Well, the cycle just turned up on the civil unrest, so it's going to get much worse. And you and I can imagine, let's say that Biden loses against Trump, what's going to happen over here? I mean, it's going to be, I don't know what's going to be, but I've never seen people being so on the edge. I give you one example. I went to my dentist. That was when Trump was still in power, and a lady says, oh, you're from Europe. You must like Le Pen. well, Le Pen is then the right-wing person in France. I says, well, I'm from Holland, I don't know much about it. He says, do you like Trump? So I says, yes, I think you don't have to look at the personality if you just write down what the guy does, what he doesn't do. And I got physically attacked. The dentist had and the assistant had to come and save me. That wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago. But look what happens with the masks. People are prepared to kill you because you disagree with how they think about masks. So everybody's on the edge. And let's hope nothing really important is going to happen within this country.
Oh, very good. Very good. Very good. Where do you think we're going to end this year? Where are we going to end this year with gold, silver, the market, the dollar? Where is that all going to go? Let's start with the dollar. Where's it going to go? Well,
that's hard for me to say because I can tell you when the low is and when the high is on all these things. It doesn't mean it's going to be there at the end of the year. For instance, if I say go out of the stock market, and usually people then say, well, that's being so well, maybe it's wrong this time, and then it's down 8%, 9%, and say, should I go out now? And I say in the middle, I have nothing to say. I can tell you where the top is, where the bottom is, and that's the problem. I can't tell you where it's at the end of the year. What I can tell you is that I don't like the stock market. The bonds are in a bounce. We didn't see a final low. I'm not so crazy about the dollar, and gold is going to start going up in the summer.
You don't. I got it. That's pretty simple. You don't like the stock market.
If you would, you know, for you, the people who always watch you, they can watch the research for free for 4 weeks, which also includes intraday because we have intraday updates. And by that, I try to explain people it doesn't have to do with the news because how can my cycle say the S&P goes up till 315 and then it goes down till the next morning at 11:30? It's all not at random. So even if they don't want to continue with the research, they get it for free for 4 weeks and at least see what's possible in investing and looking how to predict market cycles and what's going to happen in the future.
Do you see because a lot of people want to know about Ukraine and Russia right now, and Russia's talking about that you know, if you send weapons to Ukraine, we're going to stop your weapons, and it'll be bad for the country sending weapons to Ukraine because you're helping fuel this war. So says Putin. Do you think that we get a nuclear war out of this Ukraine, NATO, whatever you want to call this Ukraine incident? Do you think we get a nuclear war out of this? Are your cycles seeing something big exploding soon?
No, because like I said, it's the end of the first week of March. I expect the stock markets to bounce. So short term, the steam should go off for a couple of weeks. But I hope that they have some clever people in the White House who understand personalities and know how to deal with personalities like Putin. Don't put him in the corner because he has no way back, because then if he loses his face, he's going to be lost in Russia. So don't push him to the edge. And I think that the big mistake was, okay, Mr. Putin, we will not make Ukraine part of the NATO for now. Because to say, oh, it's an independent country, they can do whatever they want. Well, Cuba was not allowed to do whatever they want, and you have to measure the same things. And I just wish maybe you can bring up an insider on your program who can discuss this point, because somebody has to bring forward and stop with all the nonsense. So if they would have said then, okay, we'll stop with Ukraine for the moment. I'm sorry, Ukraine, you cannot become part of the NATO. Maybe it would have stopped over here. And what I hope now is that have some clever people who can read the personality of Putin and not continue to push him in the corner, because that will lead to catastrophe.
That's pretty much it. You think your read on the powers that be think, we made a mistake. We made a miscalculate. We weren't planning on this. You think they made a mistake?
They're not planning on anything. Like I said, let's say the cycles work, and I sent you a link from a couple of years ago where I was on the Russian television talking about cycles, and there wasn't a time that I was invited. People came to me, Mr. Putin would like to understand about cycles, can you come to Russia? And you might say in the West it's all nonsense, but at least you have to know if people react on cycles, and he was very interested in war cycles, because at that time on Fox Channel, I was talking about war cycles, and he was very interested in that. At least know what other people are looking at. If he would be looking at or the Chinese will be looking at astrology, and you don't believe in astrology, but they're going to do something against Taiwan based on astrology, you have to learn astrology. You understand what the problem is? You cannot say the way I look at the world is this is reality, and like they say, Russia has a different reality. So try to understand what they base a different reality on.
And you think the oil price, it's $100 a barrel, roughly, plus or minus, and you think this helps Putin?
Well, okay, because he makes the money, because we import the oil, so we are financing the war. So all he had to do is wait till the cycle bottoms. Now he knows the oil price going up. Now he knows he can spend money for war because he's going to get a lot of money because the oil price goes up.
And you think oil prices, your cycles are saying oil prices, oil and gold up. That's what you're...
Yeah. Yes. So maybe when gold starts going up after the summer, the situation is going to get worse. Again, I think the big problem is the situation with Taiwan. I don't think that they have any plan if they're going to block, the Chinese going to block the waters of Taiwan. The Americans, what they're going to do, what they're not going to do. They don't have any plans. They just live from day to day, and the media are talking from day to day in order to support whoever candidate they like. And we're not going to survive like this.
And that will leave. You have a, we'll leave it at that. I hope you're wrong, but you're not wrong a lot.
Me too.
Yeah, you're not wrong a lot. I mean,
so let's see. The interesting thing is, let's see what happens to end of the first week of March if we do get this bounce, and what the reason is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Your cycle work, you can find at Charles Nenner Research Center or charlesnenner.com.
charlesnenner.com.
You do have a deal if you put in the promo code Hunter. Is that the deal?
Yes. You get it like 4 weeks for free.
If you put in Hunter, you'll get 4 weeks for free.
Yeah.
And then you can cancel after that. Nobody ever complains about you screwing them or trapping them or ripping them off. Nobody ever complains.
No, we're in business for 25 years.
Yeah. I'm just saying to people that nobody. I mean, I never get any complaints on you. But anyway, you're a brilliant guy, and thank you for coming on and talking about the war cycle. It looks like we may get a respite going into March. If the markets bounce, then everybody thinks, oh wow, it's over. But you're right about painting them into a corner. I mean, this is very dangerous. This is really dangerous.
Very dangerous.
And just the financial, it does say we don't have nuclear war, which is awful. But the financial implications at the moment, and I don't think we're going to have a nuclear war at the moment, but the financial implications are awful. I think they're shooting them, they're blowing their toes off. I just think they're stupid. I mean, we're in a weak, the West is in a very weak position. And they're pulling this.
If you listen to the people who are in charge, they says let's make a no-fly zone over Ukraine, and they don't realize that's an act of war, and then you're in war. So they just talk out of I don't know what they're thinking.
I mean, this is wild. This must be extremely hard to pick these cycles out. Be with the background of we're gonna have a no-fly zone now, or or whatever they're doing. I mean, this is a really difficult time for you to peg these cycles. Is that right?
No, everything goes according to plan.
Oh, okay.
There's no everything. Actually everything goes perfectly. Like I was said, something's going to look a bit better by the end of the first week of March. Let's see what it is.
Okay. All right. Well, Charles Nenner, thanks for coming on for the update and the war cycle update, because everybody's worried about this, and so am I. But looks like we'll get a bounce if your cycle work is correct, and it usually is. It looks like we'll get a bounce. Charles Nenner, it's charlesnenner.com is the website. The links will be in the after interview section. The promo code, which I don't get anything of, just so you all know that I just do this because I like Charles Nenner. But is Hunter. Just put in Hunter, you'll get 4 weeks for free. Is that right? Charles Nenner, is that right? Charles Nenner, put in.
Yes, correct.
Okay, sorry. I just want to make sure you're okay. Sometimes the audio cuts off with Skype and stuff like that, so I never can tell when that's going to happen. But anyway, Charles Nenner, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you.